12 minutes before midnight, the room goes cold enough for Nia Holloway to feel it on her bare arms, and the music hasn't even stopped playing. She is holding a glass of champagne that never makes it to her lips. Because every single guest at her own birthday party has gone quiet at the same time, all of them turn toward the entrance, and Nia has never seen a room freeze like that in her life. She turns to see what they're looking at. A man is standing in the doorway of the private event hall in Buckhead, and he is not on the guest list. Two other men are behind him, standing the way security stands when they are watching exits, not watching a party, and in his hands is a small white box, tied with a ribbon, like he has come to give her a gift instead of a warning. Nia sets the glass down on the table without looking away from him. He is tall, dressed in black from his tie to his shoes, and his face has the kind of stillness that makes other people in the room lower their voices without being told to. He does not look around at the flowers or the cake or the string lights strung across the ceiling. He looks only at her, like she is the only reason the room exists tonight. She has never met him. She has never spoken to him. She has definitely never invited him. And yet he crosses the room like he has been here before, like the space belongs to him and everyone else is simply borrowing it for the night. And he stops less than 3 feet from her, close enough that she can smell the faint trace of cedar on his jacket. Happy birthday, Nia. Her name in his mouth feels wrong, the way it feels wrong when a stranger already knows something about you that you never gave them. How do you know my name? He looks at her for a long moment before he answers, long enough that she notices her own heartbeat in her ears, steady and much too loud. Because I've been looking for you. Somewhere behind her, a woman gasps quietly enough that only Nia hears it, and the DJ, sensing something is wrong even without knowing what, lowers the music without being asked. The candles on the cake behind her keep burning, small and orange and completely unaware that anything has changed. Nia's mind moves fast, trying to place his face somewhere in her past, some client, some event, some name mentioned once at a gala, and it comes up empty every single time. Nothing about him is familiar. Everything about him feels like a door she didn't know was standing open behind her. I think you have the wrong party. I don't. He says it so calmly that it scares her more than if he had shouted it. One of the guests near the bar leans toward another and whispers his name, and Nia catches only fragments of it. Real estate, security company, the kind of man people in this city don't say no to, and the fragments don't comfort her. They make the box in his hands look heavier than it is. What's in the box? Something your mother wanted you to have. The room tilts slightly just for Nia, just for a second. Her mother has been dead for 6 years, and for 6 years, Nia has learned to hear that word mother without it doing anything to her chest anymore. She has trained herself. She thought she had trained herself, but hearing it from a stranger's mouth, in a room full of people watching her, does something the 6 years of practice never prepared her for. Her throat tightens before she can stop it. Her fingers curl slightly against the fabric of her dress. For 1 second, she is not 32 and successful and steady. She is 13 again, standing in a kitchen that smells like her mother's cooking, being told a story with half the truth missing. She swallows it down before anyone else can see it. Don't, she says quietly. Don't use her to get 5 minutes of my time. I'm not. She doesn't reach for the box. He doesn't push it toward her. And that, more than anything he has said so far, is the detail that unsettles her the most. A man with that kind of reputation, standing that close, and he is willing to simply wait. You're not going to open it tonight, he says, like he already knows her better than the people who've known her for years. But you should know that not everyone in this room is here to celebrate you. Nia's eyes move across the party on instinct, the caterers, her assistant, her closest friends, her brother Caleb near the dessert table with a drink he hasn't touched. And then they land on a man she doesn't recognize standing near the far wall, not holding a glass, not talking to anyone, watching her the way a man watches something he intends to take. The moment she notices him, he turns and disappears into the crowd like he was never there at all. She looks back to ask the stranger with the box if he saw him too, and his face has already changed, his jaw tightening in a way that tells her he saw him first. He murmurs something low to the men behind him, too quiet for Nia to catch, and one of them moves toward the exit without a word. "You've been watching this room before you even walked in," Nia says slowly, "and it isn't a question." "Yes. I don't need a stranger deciding who's dangerous at my own party. I'm not deciding anything for you." "Then what are you doing here?" For the first time since he walked in, something shifts behind his eyes. Something that looks almost like fear, though Nia can't imagine what a man like him would be afraid of. "I'm here because someone already decided something about you," he says, "and it isn't good." The name he gave the room a moment ago still means nothing to her. She has never heard it before tonight, has never seen it in a headline or a contract or a whispered conversation. But she watches three separate groups of guests go quiet the instant they hear it repeated near them. Watches grown men in expensive suits find a reason to look at their shoes. She doesn't know who he is. Everyone else in this room clearly does. "Who are you?" He glances once toward the door, toward wherever his man just went, and when he looks back at her, his voice drops so only she can hear it. "Kang Tae-won." The candles behind her flicker as someone brushes past too quickly, and Nia keeps her eyes on his face, refusing to be the only person in the room who flinches at a name. "And what exactly does my mother have to do with you?" Tae-won doesn't answer right away. Instead, he looks down at the box still resting in his hands, and for a second his thumb moves slightly along the ribbon, like he isn't sure he's ready to say the next part out loud. "She spent 30 years trying to make sure you never had to ask me that question." Before we go any further, tell us where you're watching from and what time it is right where you are. Somewhere near the entrance, the man who left comes back through the door, moving faster than he left, scanning the room, and shaking his head at Tae-won in a way that makes every muscle in his shoulders go rigid. Nia doesn't understand the signal, but she understands the look on Tae-won's face when he turns back to her, and it isn't calm anymore. "We need to leave, now." "I'm not going anywhere with you." "Nia." The lights in the hall flicker once, then go completely black, and somewhere in the sudden dark, a woman screams. Before we proceed, kindly subscribe to see how this unfolds and comment where you're watching from. I will love to say hello to you just to know how far our story is going. The scream cuts off mid-breath, and in the dark, Nia feels a hand close around her wrist, not rough, not grabbing, but certain. The grip of someone who has already decided he is not letting go. "Stay behind me. I can't see anything." "That's the point. Move when I move." Glass breaks somewhere near the bar. A table goes over, plates crashing to the marble floor, and somewhere in the chaos her brother's voice calls her name once before it's swallowed by the crowd pushing toward the exits. Nia's heels catch on something soft, a drop jacket, maybe a chair cushion, and Tae-won's arm comes across her waist before she falls, steadying her without slowing down. A red emergency light flickers on above the kitchen doors, casting the room in short, stuttering pulses of color, just enough for Nia to see shapes moving. Guests crouch behind overturned tables. A caterer flat against the wall with both hands over her mouth. And near the far exit, for less than a second, the outline of the man she saw earlier, the one who wasn't drinking, wasn't talking, only watching standing perfectly still while everyone else runs. Then the light stutters again and he's gone. There, she says, pointing. He was right there. I saw him. Who is he? Tae-won doesn't answer. He pulls her toward a service corridor behind the kitchen, one of his men already ahead of them, checking the hallway before waving them through. The corridor smells like bleach and warm bread, mundane smells that feel obscene against what just happened in the ballroom behind them. Nia's pulse is loud in her own ears. Her hands are shaking, and she hates that they are. That wasn't a random gunshot, she says. Someone planned that. Yes. At my birthday. Yes. Why? He stops walking so suddenly that she almost runs into him. In the dim hallway light, his face has lost all of its earlier stillness. For the first time since he walked through her front doors carrying a white box, he looks like a man who is afraid of something bigger than himself. Because you're the one thing standing between certain people and a great deal of money, he says, and they've been waiting a long time to find you. Emergency vehicles arrive within 11 minutes, red and blue lights sweeping across the building's windows, and by the time Nia is sitting on the back bumper of an ambulance with a blanket someone put over her shoulders that she doesn't remember accepting, the police have already started asking questions she can't answer. A detective named Renee Castellano crouches in front of her, notepad open, voice gentle in the way people get gentle around someone who's just survived something. Ma'am, can you tell me if you recognize the shooter? No. Any idea why someone would target your event? Nia looks past her, toward the black SUV parked at the curb where Tae-won stands talking low and fast to one of his men, his jaw tight, his eyes scanning the street like he expects the danger to still be somewhere close. I think the man over there might know, Nia says, but he hasn't told me anything yet. Detective Castellano follows her gaze, and something crosses her face recognition, maybe, or caution before she writes something down and doesn't ask Nia to repeat it. 3 days pass, and in that time, Nia doesn't hear from Tae-won once. No calls, no messages, no black SUVs parked outside her building, though she catches herself checking the street from her office window more times than she wants to admit. Her office on the 4th floor of a converted warehouse in Midtown feels smaller than it used to. The walls closer, the silence after 5 o'clock louder. She replays the party in pieces, the box she never opened, sitting untouched on her kitchen counter, the name Kang Tae-won that made a room full of strangers go quiet, the sentence that hasn't left her head since she heard it. Something your mother wanted you to have. On the 4th night, she finally opens it. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper gone soft with age, is a jade pendant carved into the shape of a crescent moon, small enough to fit in her palm. She turns it over and finds 2 letters engraved on the back, HH, and beneath them, a date, the 14th of October, 1998. Her birthday. She has never seen this pendant before in her life, and yet someone carved her exact birth date into the back of it more than 3 decades ago. Her hands go cold holding it. She calls the only person who might know something her mother's oldest friend, a retired teacher named Deborah Ashworth who still lives in the same house in Decatur, where Nia spent half her childhood summers. Deborah answers on the 3rd ring, and when Nia describes the pendant, there's a long pause on the line before the older woman speaks again, her voice suddenly careful in a way it never used to be. Your mother asked me to keep something for you a long time ago, Deborah says. She said if a man named Kang ever came looking for you, I was supposed to give it to him, not to you. She never explained why. Did she ever mention him? Ever say his name to you? Once. She said his family was the reason we moved to Atlanta in the first place. Deborah's voice drops lower, like she's afraid of being overheard in her own kitchen. She said if you ever met him, it meant she'd already failed to keep you safe. The line goes quiet between them, filled only with the faint sound of a television somewhere in Deborah's house, and Nia sits at her kitchen table, holding a pendant that suddenly feels less like jewelry and more like evidence. 2 nights later, at a charity gala downtown, Nia is crossing the parking lot toward her car when the world moves too fast for her to process it. Headlights swinging wide across the pavement, an engine roaring louder than it should, and then a hand closing hard around her waist, yanking her backward off her feet a half second before a black SUV tears through the space she'd just been standing in and slams into a parked Mercedes with a sound like the whole night breaking in half. She hits the ground hard, breath knocked out of her, ears ringing, and when she looks up, Tae-won is standing over her, already scanning the parking lot, his body angled between her and the wreckage like a wall. "You," she says, the word coming out ragged. "Are you hurt? You've been following me." "Yes." Her anger arrives before the fear does, hot and immediate. "For how long?" "Since the night of your party." She pushes herself up onto her elbows, ignoring the hand he offers to help her. "You don't get to decide when I need protecting." "No," he says quietly, "but somebody else already did." "Who?" He doesn't answer. And that silence, the same silence from the party, the same refusal to give her a name, frightens her more than the SUV did. His security team fans out across the lot within seconds, and somewhere behind them she hears sirens starting up in the distance. But Nia doesn't move, doesn't look away from him. "You knew this would happen tonight." "I suspected it, and you didn't warn me." "Would you have believed me?" She doesn't have an answer for that, and the fact that she doesn't scares her almost as much as the wreckage 6 feet away. By the following week, Tae-won has stopped pretending distance is an option. He buys the building that houses her office, the entire building, 4 floors, without asking her opinion first, and when Nia finds out from her landlord instead of from him, she drives straight to the address listed on his company's letterhead and finds herself standing in a penthouse office on the 40th floor, glass walls overlooking a skyline she's lived under her whole life without ever seeing it from this high. "You bought my building." "I bought the building. Because of me." "Yes." "You think money gives you the right to control my life?" "No." "Then what gives you the right?" He looks at her for a long moment, long enough that she almost repeats the question, and when he finally answers, his voice has none of the coldness she expected from a man like him. "Fear." "Fear of what?" "Of what happens if I fail to protect you." The words land somewhere Nia isn't ready for. And for the first time since he walked into her birthday party carrying a white box, she doesn't see a dangerous stranger standing in front of her. She sees a man who has spent every day since that night bracing for something he refuses to name out loud. And whatever it is, it terrifies him more than anything he's shown her yet. "You keep telling me someone made a decision about me," she says. "I want the name." Tae-won walks to the window, hands in his pockets. City lights spread out behind him like a second skyline reflected in the glass. "Your mother was running from my family." The sentence hits her like a second collision, quieter than the first but somehow worse, because this one doesn't leave bruises she can see. It leaves a question she can't put down. "What exactly was my mother running from?" He turns back to face her, and for the first time, Nia realizes that whatever answer is coming next is going to change everything she thought she knew about her own life. Caleb Holloway hasn't slept in 4 days, and it shows in the way his hand shakes when he lights a cigarette outside a gas station on Cascade Road, the flame catching twice before it holds. 2 men are watching him from a parked car across the lot, the same car that's been outside his apartment every morning this week, and Caleb knows exactly why they're there before either of them says a word. $180,000. That's the number that's been sitting in his chest like a stone since the night 3 months ago when a friendly game turned into something he couldn't walk away from. The kind of debt that doesn't just disappear because you stop showing up. The man who finally approaches him doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't have to. "We're not here for the money anymore, Caleb," he says, close enough that Caleb can smell mint on his breath. "We found something better." "I don't have anything better." "Your sister does." Caleb's stomach drops. "Leave her out of this." "That depends on you." The man slides a folded piece of paper into Caleb's jacket pocket, patting it once like he's tucking in a child. "Get us into Kang Tae-won's records. Just once. Your debt disappears, and so do we." "I can't do that." "Then we'll find another way to get what we need. And your sister happens to be standing right in the middle of it." Caleb refuses for 2 more days, sitting alone in his apartment with the folded paper sitting on his kitchen table like something radioactive, until a photograph arrives under his door. Nia, leaving her office, timestamp from that same afternoon, with a single red circle drawn around her car. He doesn't sleep that night either. By morning, he's made his decision. Getting into Tae-won's Atlanta office isn't hard for someone who spent the last 2 years fixing computers for half the businesses in his sister's building. Old trust, old access codes nobody bothered changing. Caleb copies what he's told to copy, moving fast, sweat soaking through his shirt, and he's 3 folders into the download when one file catches his eye by accident, a payment ledger with a name on it he wasn't looking for. His father's name, connected line by line to a company owned by the Kang family, dated years before Caleb was even born. He sits frozen at the desk, the download still running, understanding arriving too slowly and too fast at the same time that whatever secret his sister has been chasing since her birthday didn't start with their mother. It started further back than either of them ever knew. He doesn't get the chance to tell her. By the time Caleb leaves the building, the men who own his debt already know exactly what he took, because they were the ones who told him where to look in the first place. Tae-won learns about the breach within an hour, sitting across from his aunt in a private dining room on the top floor of a hotel he's owned for a decade, watching her sip tea like nothing in the world could touch her. Mi-suk Han has always carried herself that way, composed, unreadable, the kind of woman rooms defer to without knowing why. For 30 years, she has stood just behind the family's legitimate businesses, respected, photographed at charity dinners, trusted by people who have no idea what she's capable of. "Someone accessed the Atlanta financial servers tonight," Tae-won says. "I heard." "You don't seem surprised." Mi-suk sets her cup down without a sound. "Should I be? You knew Nia Holloway was alive. You've known for years." His voice stays level, but something underneath it has gone sharp. "You let my father believe her mother stole from this family. You let me believe she died as a child. I protected this family. You lied to me. I made choices you weren't ready to understand." She finally looks at him directly, and for the first time Tae-won sees something in his aunt's expression he's never seen before. Not guilt, but calculation. The look of someone recalculating a plan that's just been disturbed. That girl is sitting on nearly $500 million in property she doesn't even know she owns. Tae-won, do you understand what happens to this family if she decides to expose where that money came from? That's not your decision to make. It was your father's decision. I only made sure it stayed made. Later that night, alone in her apartment, Nia sits at her kitchen table with a jade pendant in her palm, turning it slowly under the lamplight, running her thumb along an edge that feels slightly raised, slightly wrong, like it was never meant to lie completely flat. She presses harder without meaning to, and something inside the pendant shifts. A hairline seam splits open along the base, so small she almost misses it. Her hands go still. Inside is a strip of microfilm, curled tight, protected for decades inside a piece of jewelry she was never supposed to open alone. She calls Tae-won before she can think better of it, and he arrives at her apartment less than 20 minutes later, still in the same dark suit from the hotel, his expression unreadable, until she holds up the pendant and shows him what's hidden inside it. He goes very quiet. "This is a legal transfer," he says finally, turning the film toward the light. "Property deeds, dated the year before your mother died." He reads further, and something changes in his face, something between disbelief and dread. "Nia, this transfers ownership of an entire commercial portfolio into your name. Hotels, land, buildings across 3 states. How much?" He looks up at her, and for once the calm control he wears like armor slips completely. "Close to $430 million. The number doesn't feel real inside her small kitchen, under the same lamp she's had since college, next to a stove that's needed repairing for a year. Nia sits down slowly, the pendant still warm from her own hand, and for a moment neither of them says anything at all. "My mother left me a fortune," she says quietly, "and let me believe we were barely getting by. She was protecting you from exactly what's happening right now." Tae-won sets the film down carefully, like it might still detonate if handled wrong. "The people who want you don't want you dead, Nia. They want you compliant. There's a difference, and it's worse." His phone buzzes once on the table between them, and he glances down, and whatever he reads there drains what little color is left in his face. "What is it?" He turns the screen toward her, and Nia reads the message twice before her mind fully accepts it. A single line. Unsigned, sent from a number Tae-won's security team has already flagged as belonging to someone inside his own family's inner circle. She won't survive the week. Tae-won is already reaching for his coat. "Get your things," he says. "We need to move you somewhere safe tonight." "Move me where?" He looks at her, and behind his eyes she sees the same fear she saw the night of her birthday, except now it has a shape, a name, a countdown attached to it that neither of them has said out loud yet. "Somewhere they won't think to look," he says, "because whoever sent that message already knows exactly where you sleep." Caleb doesn't speak for almost a full minute after the paramedics stop the bleeding enough to let Nia close to him, his hands shaking in hers, his eyes moving around the ambulance like he's trying to remember where he is. "Caleb, look at me. What happened in there?" He doesn't answer. His jaw works like he's chewing on words he can't get out, and Nia watches fear cross his face that has nothing to do with the wound in his shoulder. "Please," she says, "whatever it is, I need to hear it from you before anyone else." "I can't. You're my brother." "That's exactly why I can't." The paramedic tells her they need to move, and Nia rides in the ambulance with her hands still wrapped around his, watching him drift in and out, watching guilt sit on his face heavier than the pain medication seems able to touch. It isn't until they're alone in a hospital hallway 2 hours later, machines beeping steady behind a curtain, that he finally looks at her and lets it out. "They found out about my debt," he says, "before you even knew Tae-won existed. They came to me first." "Who did?" "I don't know their names. Men who work for people who work for people." His voice cracks. "They didn't ask me to hurt you. They asked me to get into a company's files. Just once. My debt disappears, and they leave us alone." "Whose files, Caleb?" "Tae-won's." He closes his eyes. "I told myself I was protecting you. If I gave them what they wanted, nobody would come near you at all. And instead I found something in the files I wasn't looking for. A payment ledger, Dad's name on it, connected to some company owned by Tae-won's family. years before either of us was born. He looks at her, tears cutting through dried blood along his jaw. I didn't even get to tell you before they knew I'd seen it. Nia sits with that for a long moment, the machines beeping steadily behind the curtain, her brother's hand cold in hers. Everyone keeps telling me they're protecting me, she says quietly, more to herself than to him. Nobody has asked what I want. Tae-won is waiting outside the room when she finally steps out, and the look on his face tells her he already knows most of what Caleb said. Your aunt didn't come near my brother herself, did she? No. Tae-won's voice is low, controlled in a way that doesn't quite hide what's underneath it. Mi-suk doesn't need to touch anyone directly. She finds a person's weakness and lets someone else apply the pressure. A debt, a threat, a photograph left under a door. She never has to be in the room. That's worse. Yes. Nia leans against the wall, exhaustion finally catching up to the adrenaline that's carried her through the last 3 hours. You told me my mother was running from your family. That's not the full story, is it? Tae-won hesitates, and for the first time since the night he walked into her birthday party, Nia watches him choose his next words carefully instead of delivering them with certainty. Your mother wasn't running from criminals, Nia, he says. She was running from mine. He stops there. That's it? That's all you're going to give me? There's more. I don't think you're ready to hear all of it standing in a hospital hallway at 2 in the morning. You don't get to decide when I'm ready. No, he says, and something in his voice softens, cracks slightly at the edges. You're right, I don't. He's quiet for a moment, looking down the empty corridor like he's deciding whether to say the next part at all. I've spent my entire life believing control was protection, he says finally. That if I managed every variable, removed every threat before it reached someone, I was keeping them safe. My father raised me to think that way. My aunt reinforced it every day since. He looks at Nia directly. I'm starting to understand that I was wrong. That kind of protection isn't safety. It's just control wearing a different name. Nia studies his face, the exhaustion in it, the honesty that wasn't there the night he first said her name across a crowded room. Then stop deciding things for me, she says, starting now. What does that look like? It looks like me telling you what happens next instead of asking your permission. She straightens off the wall. We're going to Savannah. Tae-won's expression hardens instantly. No, you misunderstood me. Nia reaches into her bag and pulls out the jade pendant, turning it once in her palm before closing her fingers around it. I'm going. You can decide whether you trust me enough to follow. She walks toward the elevator without waiting for his answer, and behind her, she hears nothing, no argument, no footsteps chasing her down the hallway, only silence, the kind of silence that tells her he's standing exactly where she left him, working out for the first time in his life what it means to let someone else hold the plan. The microfilm gives up its second secret at 4 in the morning, 3 days after the hospital, when Nia finally sits down with a magnifying lamp and reads every line instead of skimming for the number that shocked her the first time. Property transfers, dates, signatures, and buried in the fourth page, a name she almost misses, a shell company registered in Delaware. Its listed director, not her mother, not Tae-won's father, but Mi-suk Han, signed 6 years before Nia was even born. Mi-suk has been inside this from the very beginning. Nia doesn't call Tae-won first. She calls a name she got weeks ago from Detective Castellano, a federal financial crimes attorney named Priya Deshmukh, who took one look at the ledger Caleb copied and told Nia, quietly, off the record, that interstate money laundering cases move slowly and carefully, and that the strongest ones are built on a target's own words. If she talks, Priya had told her, we need her recorded. Clean audio, no leading questions, nothing a defense attorney can call entrapment. That conversation happened 4 days ago. Nia has been carrying it unspoken ever since. She drives to Savannah alone, the way the text message demanded, and she brings only two things: the recorder taped flat against her ribs beneath her shirt, and the knowledge that Mi-suk cannot afford to have her killed. Not yet. Not until the shell company's true owner signs something making it legal. Taiwan is 200 yards away in an unmarked car when Nia walks through the iron gates alone, exactly as she told him to be. Mi-suk is waiting on the veranda, a glass of sweet tea sweating on the table, her composure arranged like a woman expecting nothing more than a difficult conversation. "You came alone," Mi-suk says. "Braver than I expected. You shot my brother. I gave no such instruction." Mi-suk's voice doesn't waver. "Whatever happened at that party had nothing to do with me." Nia sits down across from her, unhurried, and lets the silence stretch longer than is comfortable. "You've never been to my office," she says finally. "And yet the man who broke in knew exactly which drawer held my mother's old photographs. Only 3 people alive knew that photograph existed. My mother is dead. My brother didn't know until 3 days ago. That leaves you." Mi-suk's expression doesn't move, but her hand tightens slightly around the glass. "I don't know what you're referring to." "You do," Nia leans forward. "Because you're the one who told the men watching my office exactly where to look. The same way you're the one who found my brother's debt and let someone else collect it. The same way your name is on a shell company in Delaware 6 years before I was born." The glass stops halfway to Mi-suk's mouth. "You've done your research. I've done more than research. I found the transfer documents my mother hid inside a pendant she trusted a man to deliver to me. And I understand something now that I didn't understand a week ago." Nia's voice stays level, steady, nothing like the frightened woman who stood in a ballroom watching a stranger walk toward her with a white box. "You can't have me killed, Mi-suk. Not until I sign something giving you what you actually want. That's the only reason I'm still breathing right now." Something behind Mi-suk's eyes finally cracks. Decades of careful control slipping in front of a woman half her age. "Your mother should have signed those papers 30 years ago." Mi-suk says, sharper now, the mask coming apart. "She could have taken the money and disappeared quietly like she was told to. Instead, she raised a daughter who thinks she has the right to sit in my home and accuse me of things she can't prove. I'm not accusing you of anything you haven't already confirmed yourself." Nia's hand rests lightly against her ribs, against the recorder beneath her shirt. "You just told me my mother was told to disappear. Only the person who gave that order would know that." Mi-suk goes very still. The color drains slowly from her face as she understands, in real time, exactly what she's done. "You thought I came here without a plan," Nia says quietly. "I came here knowing exactly what you would say, because I've spent the last 3 days working with a federal attorney who's been waiting for this conversation as long as I have." Tae-won steps onto the veranda a moment later, having watched from the garden path as agreed, and he doesn't move toward Nia, doesn't speak for her, doesn't try to finish what she's already finished herself. He simply stands beside her, close enough to be present, far enough to make it clear this belongs to her. "She doesn't need me to answer for her," he says quietly to the agents now moving up the veranda steps. "She hasn't needed that in a long time." 3 months later, Nia stands in the courtyard of a restored property outside Atlanta that once sat behind locked gates and unpaid taxes, watching a group of children run across new grass toward a community center that didn't exist a year ago. A small plaque near the entrance carries her mother's name. She watches a boy no older than 8 stop in front of it, trace the letters with his finger, and ask his teacher what it means. "It means someone made sure you'd have this." the teacher tells him. Nia doesn't correct her. Mi-suk is awaiting federal trial. Caleb is back in school, slower than before, steadier than he's ever been. And the fortune Nia's mother spent 30 years protecting with silence now funds, scholarships, shelters, and buildings like the one in front of her, filled with children who will never know how close all of this came to disappearing into someone else's hands. Tae-won finds her at the edge of the courtyard, watching the same children she's been watching. "Why did you really come to my birthday?" she asks without looking at him. "At first, because I was ordered to find you." He's quiet for a moment, and now I don't know how to walk away. Nia almost smiles at that, the first easy feeling she's had in months. But her phone buzzes once in her pocket before she can answer him a message from an unknown number. One line long. "Your mother didn't hide you from Tae-won's family. She hid you from someone else." She reads it twice, and when she looks up at Tae-won, she doesn't have to say anything at all. He already knows from the look on her face that whatever piece they've found today isn't the end of the story. If this one kept you watching until the very end, I'd love to have you back for the next chapter of Nia's story. No pressure, just to subscribe if you want to be there when it drops. And if you've got a minute, I'd genuinely love to hear what you think Nia's mother was really hiding from. Drop it in the comments.